The right to offend is not some pesky little part of freedom of speech that we have to put up with. It is the heart and soul and lungs of freedom of speech. It is the coursing lifeblood of human progress. It is the instigator of liberty and modernity and science and understanding. What a laughing stock today's student leaders are, that they can so casually dismiss the right to be offensive without realizing that their lovely, enlightened lives are the gift of individuals who gave offense. Offensiveness is not just something we have to begrudgingly accept. Offensiveness is the motor of human progress.
Now broadcasting from the Right to Offend Media Studios in sunny South Florida, bringing you the latest in politics, current events, art, and pop culture. This is the Whitfield Report Live with Sam Whitfield.
But giving offense is good. In fact, it's essential.
Hello there, everyone, and welcome to today's Monday edition of the Whitfield Report podcast. I am your host, Sam Whitfield, here at Right to Offend Media Studios, and I hope your Monday is going well, and I hope the beginning of your week is going well. Happy summer officially. It is officially summer as of yesterday, and boy, has it been a hot one so far. Here in Florida, it's in the 90s consistently, and I'm told elsewhere it is much the same. So, a long, hot American summer to go along with America's 250th birthday, which will be coming up here very shortly. A lot to celebrate here in America. Indeed, which we'll be, getting to a bit later on in the program, kind of towards the end of the show. A lot of Europeans and just foreigners in general who are here for the World Cup are discovering just how great America really is. So we will be playing one of those clips kind of at the end of the show. But anyway, I wanted to begin the show off today by talking about what is next for the Republican Party and for the GOP after Trump leaves office, right? Who is going to be the next president of the United States? And if you are listening or watching to this episode and you've seen the title of today's episode, then you already know my answer of who I think should be the next president of the United States. And I've said this before, but I'll say again, I do believe that Vice President JD Vance should ascend to the presidency officially after Trump's term is up. And the reason I believe that this is true and that this should be the case is that Vance really understands the MAGA agenda that Trump has set out in a way that few others do. Not only that, but he also seems to understand how to implement it, which cannot be said for a lot of the other potential GOP frontrunners, other than perhaps Marco Rubio, who could also be a contender, and I wouldn't mind seeing him either. But I do think that JD is the man for the job. And the reason I say that is a few reasons. JD Vance really understands the MAGA policy, but he also understands how to communicate it effectively. We've seen this in the way that he's handled the current Iran situation. He's been the one negotiating a peace deal, which I know, it's Iran and it could fall apart, but he's the one out there, kind of taking charge and manning the helm on that. And he is also very eloquently doing it as well, I should say. He has the type of background I think we really, that a lot of Americans like. He came from humble means and, kind of started at the bottom, so to speak. With a family who, his mother struggled with drug addiction for a long time. He was kind of raised by his grandmother single-handedly. He got through high school, went into the Marine Corps, served honorably, got out, went to business school, became a entrepreneur, was part of the tech field, and then became senator, and then ascended to the vice presidency. So his roots make him relatable and kind of the everyman, which is something that, the GOP, I don't want to say lacks, but he definitely does not have the DC insider track as much as some others do. He's not a complete outsider like Trump was, because he has had somewhat of a political career, but he does have that blue collar working class background that Trump doesn't have. And as I said, he's able to articulate things in a way that the common man I think is able to understand and grasp. He's not someone who makes all these grandiose speeches or tries to conform simply to the religious right or to the diehard warhawks. No, he's just a plain spoken guy, and I think that really bodes well for him. He's not a forever wars guy. He has said that, and like I said, he's able to outline his points very effectively, and to demonstrate this, I want to show Vance's remarks in Lucerne over the weekend regarding Iran. This is a night and day difference between him and Kamala Harris. He really does seem to understand policy and is extremely effective at this. So let me pull this up here. Yeah. Alright, so JD Vance is remarks in Lucerne, Switzerland regarding Iran. Clip number 1, play.
Hello, everybody, and good morning to everybody back in the United States. I guess good afternoon to the folks assembled. So look, yesterday was a very, very good day. We made a lot of good progress. We did exactly what we wanted to do, which is accomplish 4 things for the American people. First, we wanted to build a mechanism for keeping the Strait of Hormuz open. It is open. We've seen, of course, gas prices and oil prices come down, millions and millions of barrels of crude and natural gas flowing through the Strait of Hormuz that weren't flowing before. But we also wanted to make sure that we actually set up the coordination mechanism so that we could demine the Straits of Hormuz, so that when there are the conflicts that inevitably come up, we can make sure we work through them rather than that leading to escalation. And that is exactly what we did yesterday. Number 2, we also wanted to build a mechanism, a similar mechanism for deconfliction for the regional ceasefire. As the President of the United States has himself said, sometimes these ceasefires just mean you're shooting a little bit less, but we wanted to make sure that we had the proper coordination set up so that if there is shooting, if Hezbollah fires at Israel or if Israel responds, if there are other conflicts that arise in the region, we're actually talking to each other and figuring out how to stop the shooting, how to make the region safer, our allies and everybody else. We set that up as well. Number 3, and this is probably what we're most excited about as Americans, the Iranians have agreed to invite IAEA inspectors back into their country. That is a major milestone for the American people and the first step in permanently denuclearizing or permanently ending a nuclear weapons program in Iran. And that's exactly.
Now, to be fair, I do want to interject here real quick. To be fair, under the Obama administration, Iran also promised to allow nuclear inspectors into their sites. And then, at the last, minute, reneged or, made up excuses as to why the inspectors couldn't come in and just plainly wouldn't let them in. So we have heard that before. Again, this is not a guarantee, but Vance is clearly outlining the agreement here, and he's doing a really good job of it.
Exactly what we wanted to do. That's exactly what we asked to happen. We made a lot of great progress on other nuclear talks. And that leads me to the final thing that we wanted to accomplish, which is actually set up the process for the technical negotiations that will follow. Our teams working with the Iranians, the Qataris, and the Pakistanis made great progress yesterday. They will continue to work at the technical level with the teams here in Bergenstock. And then those technical negotiations are going to continue over the weeks and days to come. We wanted to set up a structure for that so that you could have proper political oversight, but obviously, as much as this place is very beautiful, I can't stay here for the next 60 days. I'm about to go back home to the United States, but the technical teams are going to be working with proper oversight to make sure that we're accomplishing the objectives that matter for everybody. So those are the things that we wanted to accomplish. We came here, we did exactly that. The way that I think about it is very simple. We laid a very good foundation for a successful final deal. The final deal is the house. We set the foundation. We haven't built the house, but we've laid a successful foundation to get to a good place for the American people. I think it's important for all of us to appreciate how much was done, but honestly, there is still a lot to do as we continue to make progress on the nuclear talks, on the economic talks, as we continue to demine the straits and ensure that that flow of traffic continues to pick back up. A lot of progress, but still some work to do, and we're very committed to doing exactly that. So
and this is another example of JD being the right man for the job. He is not saying that the deal is done and that total victory has been achieved. He's not doing the George W. Bush thing of flying the mission accomplished banner, and then the war goes on for, 15 years later after that, right? He's saying, hey, look, this deal isn't official yet, but we have laid the groundwork and we're making good deals. I do believe that Marco Rubio, being the Secretary of State, could also do something like this. But Vance, in the way he speaks, clearly outlines his points like this. He's very definitive. He's very firm, not overly aggressive, but he says what he means. And he seems to have a really positive and optimistic temperament. These are all things that you want in a leader in general. And this is something that, other than Trump himself, and again, Rubio, I'm not seeing this level of precision or this level of, frankly, enthusiasm from very many potential people in the GOP right now who could be running. And then, from the left, forget about them. They're basically a non-entity, at this point.
With that, I'm happy to take a few questions from guys in the audience. I appreciate you guys being here. Let's start with you.
Yeah, so those basically are the remarks. Again, he got in there, made his remarks. 3 minutes total for those remarks. And, I'm not going to make you watch the Q&A session, although maybe, you know what, I'm not going to watch the whole entire thing, but let's see how Vance does responding to some of these questions real quick.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Did the president's threats yesterday really throw a wrench in negotiations? There were reports that the Iranians walked out at one point. Can you just clarify and tell us what happened?
No, they didn't throw a wrench in the system. The thing with the Iranians, yes, they did threaten to walk out, or at least there were social media threats that they would walk out. But we were negotiating well past 1 a.m. yesterday, so they didn't walk out. And their technical team is still here in Bergenstock working with our technical team actually as we speak, though I imagine maybe some of them are taking a break to watch this news conference. But look, what we told the Iranians yesterday is when you guys engage in what us millennials might call trash talk, you can't expect the president of the United States not to respond and not to correct the record. So when they say things that aren't true, the president is going to respond to it. I'm going to respond to it. Americans are going to respond to it. When they make threats that aren't rooted in reality, they have to accept that the president of the United States is actually going to set the record straight. That's all that happened. So yes, there was a little bit of threatening, there was a little bit of whining, but at the end of the day, the talks continued and we made great progress.
Nuclear inspectors, when do you expect them to be welcomed into Iran? Is there a time frame that you guys are looking at? And also in terms of when we could see this entire conflict end, do you think this can end by the midterm elections?
Well, look, right now the conflict is in a ceasefire, and certainly our hope is that we get to the final deal and a permanent settlement. But right now, I think we've made great progress, and we should all celebrate that. In terms of when the nuclear inspectors are going to start, it's funny, we were trying to call some of the inspectors last night around 2 a.m. As you can expect, not many people were answering their phone at 2 a.m. I expect that will happen at the minimum this week, but we think even some of those conversations with the inspectors and with the IAEA could happen as soon as today. But I haven't checked in with our team since we made that 2 a.m. phone call to some of those inspectors. Sorry.
Mr. Vice President, Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Did you, going in, expect the Iranians to make Lebanon as much of a linchpin as they ended up doing? And how would you describe the progress on Lebanon? I know Mr. Arachi said it was very good progress, but what's your characterization of it?
Yeah, I would describe it as very good progress, too. I mean, look, we want a regional ceasefire, right? We want Hezbollah to stop firing at our friends in Israel. We want Israelis to be able to live in peace. We also want to make sure that, you know, when things happen, they don't spiral into a broader escalation. And so we've been, I think, very good at setting up what we're calling a deconfliction mechanism. But what it really is to say that when things happen, the sides are actually talking to one another. Sometimes, you know, you got a bit of a chicken and egg problem, that you've got a junior guy who fires a drone that didn't have approval from the high command. Okay, of course, Israel has to respond to that. But then sometimes that response, we could actually have a better and more peaceful situation if Israel responds in the context of a conversation that's ongoing between Hezbollah, Lebanon, Israel, and other partners in the region. There really hasn't been a mechanism to have those discussions until basically around 4 p.m. yesterday, Bergenstock time, when we set that up. So what we're trying to do is to say, first of all, Israel and every other nation in the region has the right of self-defense, but we want to make sure that everybody has that right of self-defense in the background, where we're talking about how to de-escalate these conflicts rather than spiraling out of control. Sometimes what will happen is that if the conflict spirals out of control, that's worse for everybody's self-defense and worse for everybody's security. So we've actually got the process in place to ensure that that escalation doesn't happen. Now, I will say you already see the fruits of that. Over the past 24 hours have probably been the most peaceful that we've seen the situation in Lebanon. The previous 24 hours were pretty good. Obviously, there was some shooting about 72 hours ago. So this is a work in progress. But what we've done is actually set up the operation so that we can ensure it doesn't spiral out of control in the future.
And this is something else I really have noticed and really appreciate about Vance, in particular, in the time that I've been watching it. Not only does he explain what the policy is that he's presenting or that he's been working on, or in this case, the negotiations, but he also explains the inside baseball on it as much as he can within reason. But he explains the process of, you know, exactly how they're talking about it, what the dialogues are like, why things are difficult, what the hurdles are, what the plans are like. He's going into very specific details and is yet communicating these things very clearly in a way that admittedly not even Trump does, you know, a lot of the time. You know, Trump will make bombastic, you know, remarks and will kind of shoot off the cuff, which, granted, as we've discussed, that can be effective sometimes too, having that wild card streak. But Vance definitely balances that out. And, you know, I think as the years, you know, continue to march on, like or not, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to have a millennial president, you know, within the next decade, I would say. Probably less. And JD, being a millennial, being, you know, of my generation, would be that perfect first millennial president. He's laying things out clearly. He's being decisive. He's not being aggressive, but he's also you know, very self-assured. And he's showing real leadership and real competence here, which is awesome. To further kind of showcase how Vice President Vance understands the MAGA agenda and can really articulate it well, I want to play another clip. Vance was on a podcast at the end of last week called The Diary of a CEO. He is also writing a book, and I guess he's doing the podcast circuit to promote it a bit. And also, he's doing PR for the White House essentially, and also talking at this Iran deal. So I'm not going to play this whole segment because it's like 30 minutes long, and the whole podcast I think is worth watching. I'm partway through it. So far it's pretty good, but I want to play this segment real quick, or a portion of this segment, because again, it really shows just how good Vance is at explaining the MAGA agenda and articulating it, especially in arenas where I wouldn't say like the Diary of a CEO. The host is not like MAGA hostile or something. He's not like on the far left, but he's not like a Rush Limbaugh, conservative type either. He's neutral, and so the host is going to have some pushback, somewhat. And Vance handles this whole thing very well, I think. So here it is, Vance on the Diary of a CEO podcast, clip 2.
The president, and I think yourself multiple times say, like, we don't really know who we're negotiating with, or words to that effect, because we've taken out the first and second row of leadership. And then I thought, we're in the same situation again, where the bomb started dropping. Unintended consequences were there's now not one central leadership to negotiate with, but also politics at home has shifted. The approval ratings of, I got this graph of the approval ratings, had started to plummet at home, and politics is changing on the ground there as well. Is this another forever war?
Let's try this out.
And of course, there's an ad. Sorry about that.
And this is always,
but also politics at home has shifted. The approval ratings of, I got this graph of the approval ratings, had started to plummet at home, and politics is changing on the ground there as well. Is this another forever war?
Well, the answer is no. And this is always, when I talked about this conflict, I always said Donald Trump learned the lessons. It's actually, that's almost unfair to him. He didn't learn the lessons of the Iraq War, because back during the Iraq War, he was saying this was stupid, we should get out of Iraq. He was saying that back then. And I think that while there were certainly some objectives that we had in this conflict, I just never had any doubt. Now, obviously, I'm an insider. I saw the president's deliberations and thought on this, but I never had any worry that this would become a multi-year expedition with no end in sight, because I knew that we had leadership that was trying to define the objective very narrowly, accomplish the objective, and then see where we are. Mm-hmm. And so, if you go back, you talk about this street uprising, certainly there was some thought that it would be possible that the Iranian street would rise up in the face of this thing, and that you would see, a new government that was much more pro-American, much more pro-Western. What happened, though, is, and what we knew we could do, is degrade their military. That was actually the primary objective. Yes, the president talked about the Iranians rising up, but the primary objective was always to degrade their conventional power so that we could be in a better position vis-a-vis Iran, so that whoever was calling the shots, they didn't have a loaded gun to our head anymore, okay? And that's what we knew we could accomplish. And then there was always the question about, okay, now that we've accomplished that, where do we go from here? And, one of the things that I feel just quite good about this moment that we're in
is the president basically bought us an option. He said, we can weaken their military, destroy their conventional military, we can change their leadership, and then we can actually present a pathway to the Iranian leadership. Where do we go from here? Like you said something very interesting that was true 2 months ago. That's not true now. 2 months ago, I would have said, I had no idea who we're negotiating with. Absolutely. Now I feel very confident that we have an understanding of who we're negotiating with, what it is that they care about. Yes, there are fractures in their system. Well, so the Iranian system, this is oversimplifying it a lot, but it has kind of three poles. There's the political pole, the people who are most responsive to the leadership. That's the foreign minister, the president, the speaker of the parliament. Okay. There's a clerical pole, meaning the clerics who actually hold ultimate authority in the Iranian system via the supreme leader, the clerics, the religious leaders. And then you have the military, particularly the IRGC. Okay. All three of these poles interact with each other in weird ways. And one of the things we definitely 2 months ago, we were like, wait a second, who has the upper hand? What does this group want versus this group versus that group? But what I feel pretty confident about now, I mean, we're taping this interview, I guess, June 15th, right?
Yeah.
What I feel quite confident about right now is that we know who we're dealing with, and the fractures really aren't the system is kind of coalesced. And what they're telling us, which is interesting. Now, is it the street rising up? No. But what they're telling us is, you know what? Obviously they're not like endorsing anything that we did. There's a lot of mistrust, a lot of animosity, but fundamentally we've done one thing vis-a-vis the United States for 47 years, and we shouldn't do that thing anymore. We want to change. And if you, the Americans, are willing to actually negotiate with us, to have a conversation, yeah, we're willing to make the long-term commitment never to develop nuclear weapons, but we want a totally different economic arrangement than what we have with the West right now. So that's where we're at right now, is actually figuring out the details of what that would look like. But where we stand right now, I actually feel pretty good about it. I feel good that we actually could have a better relationship with that country. I feel good that they'll never have a nuclear weapon. So that'd be like a real loaded gun they would have to the West. But I also think that there is a general consensus that they're in their system, that their relationship would be different than the past. The other thing, this is very important. The underappreciated element, if I was ever going to write a book about Donald Trump's foreign policy, and by the way, he hates people who write books, not like books like that, but insider books where you take trusted information and put it into a book. Doesn't like that. But what I would say is he's so non-conventional in the way that he does everything, but certainly in the way that he does foreign policy, that things that were previously unimaginable are actually on the table. So when Donald Trump says to the Iranians, we want you to be a successful country, if you give us what we need on nuclear, we'll take the sanctions off your country and allow you to prosper, that would have been unthinkable 10 years ago in any Democrat or Republican administration. But it's thinkable because Donald Trump is just like, no, the way things worked in the past are dumb. We're going to do something new. And that's what he's putting on the table. We'll see if they meet us, but right now I feel pretty good about it.
And that right there, ladies and gentlemen, that is what I mean when I say that Vance really understands Trump's agenda in ways that I don't think very many people in the GOP understand it. Like he gets it, and granted, he's the Vice President of the United States, but as we've come to find out over the past couple of years, that doesn't always mean that the Vice President always understands the policies. Kamala Harris could not defend Biden's policies at all. Now, granted, she couldn't really speak in general without turning things into a giant word salad. There's that whole element. But again, Vance really understands Trump's non-conventional policies here, particularly when it comes to foreign policy. And as I've stated overall, he's very articulate. He breaks things down and really simplifies them. Sometimes, he says he's oversimplifying things, like with the Iran hierarchy, and that was oversimplifying things. But not very many politicians, no politician I've seen, would have tried to do that. I think that the fact that Vance does so many podcasts as well, I mean, he does this one, he's done Rogan, he goes on Theo Vaughn's podcast, a couple times. And I'm not the biggest Theo Vaughn fan, but the fact that Vance, goes on those shows really articulates to me that he understands millennial media and the way that millennials intake information, which largely is podcasts and YouTube and media, right? JD understands the medium. He understands how to communicate effectively. And he's been very strong on policies, particularly foreign. Domestic wise, that's an interesting, question, because he does deal a lot, more with foreign policy at this point. He has pitched in a bit on what he thinks the future of AI should be, which I think, with his background in tech, is, very, that's a mandatory skill set to have, I think, particularly because AI, as we've said here on the program multiple times, as multiple guests have said, AI is here to stay, right? That genie is not going back in the bottle, and Vance, with his tech background, really understands it, and out of all the politicians, I think he'll be, if he becomes president of the United States, he will know how to implement effectively, or at the very least, know how to find people in his administration who can implement effectively for the future of the United States. So as I've said before, I'm very impressed with him. I do know that there's been some pushback with him, regarding his, I guess, MAGA bona fides, and the fact that he wasn't a Trump guy from day one. And, some people are upset about that. But, listen, I was not like a MAGA guy from day one either. I was never a never Trumper, right? But I was skeptical of, Trump as well at first. And, Trump won me over early on in 2016, and then I did vote for him, and I caught a lot of flack from some, more establishment GOP types, right? And then the religious right also doesn't seem to like JD Vance, for whatever reason, because even though Vance is a Christian, I guess he's not hardline enough for them, which I don't understand why. But again, my criticism of the religious right, particularly with the Mike Pence types, and the Lila Roses, right? Not so much the religious right, like the voters, but the religious right leadership is they will throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? Donald Trump, specifically in relation to abortion, And, that whole kerfuffle, he gave that to the states and made it a states' rights issue regarding abortion, right? And Charlie Kirk said that that was, good policy. And Charlie Kirk is, on the ledge, right? I would say, or he was. But he was one of the few to really acknowledge that that was, a good policy. Meanwhile, you had, people like Lila Rose, who said that that wasn't going far enough, that it needed to be a unilateral federal abortion ban. That wasn't going to happen, as we know. So having it as a states' rights issue really was the best thing. So I think, Trump knows that. And Vance seems to, come from that same school where he's more of a pragmatist like Trump. He's less concerned about, appealing to, various smaller factions of the base, and wants to, improve things overall for the GOP and for the future of the country. And that is why at this point, I'm endorsing Vance for POTUS 48. I know we're, 2 years out here, but 2028 is, it's going to be here pretty soon. And so you want to know my thoughts early on? I'm definitely leaning towards Vance, and I just kind of wanted to articulate why. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I do kind of want to pivot to something a bit more fun and lighthearted to kind of wrap up the show. As many of you know, I have made a big deal about, this 4th of July, this Independence Day being America 250. We've been participating in the World Cup and doing very well in soccer. And because the World Cup is in Texas, there have been a lot of, foreigners and Europeans and even some Australians coming into the country. And I just wanted to show this, fun clip. And these have been popping up all over the internet. Foreigners being amazed with just how awesome America is. In this particular instance, an Australian dad and his son go to Longhorn Steakhouse, and they are absolutely amazed by the quality of the food at Longhorn Steakhouse. Which for those who don't know, for some of our European listeners and viewers listening to the podcast, Longhorn Steakhouse is like considered like mid-tier food. It's nice, but as far as restaurants, you have your McDonald's, your fast food, which is kind of, it's okay. It's if you're really hungry, it'll, it's good enough. But, American fast food is nothing to write, home about in general. Restaurants like Longhorn Steakhouse, they're generally viewed as mediocre to good here, depending on which location you go to. And then you have your Morton Steakhouses, your Houston's Steakhouse, your top of line, expensive luxury chains. Capitol Grill is another one where it's very high end and luxurious, and you go there for special occasions. But here we have an Australian going to Longhorn Steakhouse with his son, and he's talking how amazing it is. So I wanted to go ahead and play this for you. Let me cue up the video here. And there we have it. Let's see. Clip 3. Let's play.
Yeah, I don't normally go to fancy restaurants, but like I'm in America with my son, so I'm like, let's go to Texas Roadhouse. It's unbelievable. First of all, they give you these peanuts. You can eat as many as you want. She's like, yeah, just take a bag. Then they come out and they put this bread on the table, and I'm like, oh, I didn't order the bread. It's like, oh, that's free. And it's like, and she goes, and if you want more bread, we'll just give you more. And this bread it's as nice as bread can possibly be. Like, if you're an Australian, try and picture the most unbelievable bread, like Subway bread. Got this fancy butter. Then they give you the Coke. Of course, it's America, so it's unlimited refill. And then it was all like ribs and steak and chips. There was an onion that had been deep fried, and you dip it in the sauce. You just leave there so happy. And then Australians are all like, yeah, but in America, you've got to tip. No, you don't have to tip. You want to tip. These people are the most wonderful people in the world. I don't even know why you Americans are so angry all the time. You guys have Texas Roadhouse in your country. You should just be walking around wanting to hug everybody.
Like I said, Longhorn Steakhouse, it's not the greatest chain, like, here in America, although I have heard that some locations are, like, really good. I like Red Lobster is historically, like, the best mid-tier, kind of like sit-down restaurant chain here in America. Although maybe like Longhorn, maybe Texas Roadhouse has improved. I know Longhorn Steakhouse. I think that's pretty much the same company. Like that. That's like another good one. So yeah, again, like you see videos like this of like Australians and Brits coming to America for the World Cup, and they're amazed at just the quality of the food here. Even our mid-tier restaurants are awesome and top shelf to people, which makes me wonder. Like, I know that Australia was a prison colony when the country when it first started, but I mean, my God, like, is the food there awful or something like that? That really does make me wonder, like, what is food in Australia like? I'd love to know. If we have any listeners from Australia, drop me a line and let me know, because I really am curious now. So all right, ladies and gentlemen, well, that'll about do it for today's Monday episode of the Whitfield Report podcast. A quick one, but a good one. I hope everyone is doing well. I will be back on Wednesday with Max and Morpheus to cover more events. I did see that Keir Starmer has stepped down, and yes, we will be covering that more in depth on Wednesday. That was kind of breaking news as I was recording the show here, so I didn't want to dive into that just yet until I get to read more about that. But we will cover all that and more on Wednesday's live show. So we'll see you then. And until then, take care. God bless. God save this great nation. And God, freedom, legacy, in that order. Thank you very much.
The right to offend is not some pesky little part of freedom of speech that we have to put up with. It is the heart and soul and lungs of freedom of speech. It is the coursing lifeblood of human progress. It is the instigator of liberty and modernity and science and understanding. What a laughing stock today's student leaders are, that they can so casually dismiss the right to be offensive without realizing that their lovely, enlightened lives are the gift of individuals who gave offense. Offensiveness is not just something we have to begrudgingly accept. Offensiveness is the motor of human progress.
Thank you for watching the Whitfield Report live on the Right to Offend Media Network. Make sure to check out Sam's books on Amazon, Audible, and Kindle. You can follow Sam on X at SamW_NGC and the Right to Offend Media Network at RTO Media. Like, comment, subscribe, and share with your friends. And until next time, God bless, God save this great nation. God, freedom, legacy, in that order.